welcome back to another episode of George on Sports with me, your host George, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by NFL Networks' very own Stacey Dales. Now, Stacey, you were in London not too long ago, where a few of us met covering the London games, but first and foremost, welcome and thanks for coming on the show. How are you?
George, I'm great. It's wonderful to be with you. The fact that we're able to connect 6 hours time zone apart, however you describe it, is really cool. And I always enjoy my time in London for the NFL International Series, and especially when there's people like you to hang out with over there who do a fantastic job. So I'm very grateful to be with you.
Thank you. That means a lot. It means a lot. I mean, it was great. Again, the London games, every time they come over, it's a big thing for us being over here because we don't get to see that many games every year. So when we do get to show up and cover that and attend the press conferences and the training and see people like yourself do your work, I mean, it's always amazing to see. Always amazing to see. Mm-hmm. I saw you managed to get around London, Tower Bridge, have some sightseeing. Yeah,
we had a great time. We were there. I was there for 16 nights, 17 days. And so obviously that's a long time to be hauling some luggage across to London from here in Chicago where I live. And yet we landed on, as you said, some great places, obviously Tower Bridge and, the park, Kensington. I mean, it was really cool. I mean, we really, I think, did a good job bringing little pieces of London back to America for our viewers over here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on that segue, we're going to go straight into three of the games that I think have some of the bigger narratives after Week 12 in the NFL. And I can't actually believe by the time people watch this, it may be Week 13, but the fact that we're already at this stage, had Thanksgiving, is kind of scary because before you know it, it's going to be over. So we're going to dive into Monday Night Football with the Colts, who lost to the Steelers. My Colts, I should say, although, at the minute, it's not the proudest thing to say, being a Colts fan, but 24-17, Monday Night Football losing to the Steelers in a game that I thought we would win. And technically, when you look at what happened, I guess we kind of should have won. Steelers had only won 3 games coming into the season, and we know Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season yet with the Steelers, and I think that's about to change. But I mean, I think, we've as a Colts fan, we've hired interim head coach Jeff Saturday for the short, we think the short period of time. And yes, that comes with the inexperience, and I think that some of that kind of showed on Monday Night Football in particular towards the end of the game, where it seemed we should have taken the time out and we didn't.
Yeah.
And we ended up, losing time off the clock, and at the end of the day, we ended up losing the game. It's been a difficult watch as a Colts fan this season for a number of reasons. Obviously, it's all out there for people to see, from poor play from Matt Ryan, the O-line, and wide receivers not showing up, or perhaps not having the right weapons for guys like Matt Ryan. We're out of the top 10 for draft picks. We don't have a first-round pick.
Yeah.
What next for the Colts?
This is shocking. I think they're probably the most disappointing team, I think, in the National Football League, George, to your points. And, when they acquired Matt Ryan, I'm with you. It seemed like a foregone conclusion that they would be back in the mix, despite the carousel at quarterback. And then all of a sudden they fire Frank Reich. They can't score points. And the offensive line looks just so atypical from what we're used to. This was, in the last 5 years, one of the best O-lines in the National Football League. And so just splinters across the board, and obviously some disconnects up top. And now you have, Jeff Saturday, who I think Jim Irsay went out and said, we need a spark. And what direction do we go? Do we bring somebody in-house to get a spark that's already, existing on this staff? Or do we do something completely, which Jim Irsay might do? He's the billionaire owner of the Indianapolis Colts. Step outside the box and do something. I don't know if outlandish is the right word, but that's it. A lot of people were critical of the move. I always tend to breathe, pause a little bit, let's see what happens. And then you see the meltdown at the end of that game, right? A minute squandered essentially by the Colts. In a span of 3 plays, essentially in Steelers territory, where they could have, had a chance in the game to win the football game. Instead, they lose 24-17, and give up rush yards, give up 172 rush yards, I believe, to the Steelers, and Benny Snell ran all over the place. So it just wasn't a good showing. It hasn't been a good showing this season, and Colts fans need to find a quarterback for the future, and it's been a struggle.
It's been a big struggle, and I think that you mentioned finding a quarterback. I think we've had a different quarterback for the last 5 or 6 seasons now. Naeem Hines said it before he was traded to Buffalo that it's kind of unfair to the team to have to learn a new system with a new quarterback every year. Meanwhile, our rivals in the Titans, Malik Willis is there, but they've happily had Tannehill, and they know how he plays. You can't win in the NFL. It's difficult to win one game, let alone a number of games when you have to change a quarterback every season. But to flip the ball a little bit and look at Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, I think it's fair to say this is probably the first season where he will probably have a losing record. But I do see a bit of a spark with Kenny Pickett and his receiver, George Pickens. They seem to have something going for those two. And they're pick to pick, right? Yeah. And it looks like that could be something for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. I love this George Pickens. I mean, we all saw that catch. He made a fantastic catch in that game on Monday Night Football. And it seems like Kenny Pickett's a guy that is going to be the future of their franchise. But they're going through their lumps, too. They've given up points at various times this year. They play in a tough division. You look at the AFC South with the Colts, and Tennessee's just been dominant in that division. And you look at the coach, and they embody Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. And then with the AFC North and all of the sort of parity in that division with Cincinnati, who's making a playoff push, Baltimore making a playoff push, and then you have obviously the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have fallen off this year. It's been interesting. So we'll see moving forward, but I do believe in Mike Tomlin. I don't think you can't when it comes to a guy like that. It's kind of like Bill Belichick. You always know you're going to get a product. You're going to get a good hard nose, sort of, you would think, ground and pound type team. And if they can develop this quarterback, maybe they can be in contention even as soon as next year in that division.
And we're going to move on to the New York Jets, who are doing very well, which isn't something that we're used to saying given how they've performed over the last few years. But credit to them, they're doing really, really well, and Robert Saleh, of course. But you bring in Mike White after the comments made by quarterback Zach Wilson, which, dare I say, kind of lost some people in the locker room, rubbed some people up the wrong way. And to be fair, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, to answer no to a question like that in terms of, do you feel any kind of responsibility, and to kind of put the blame on the wind isn't what I was expecting from a starting quarterback of a team in the NFL. It was, it's not hard to sort of, accept the responsibility and just, I'm trying to get better, et cetera, et cetera. So you bring in Mike White, and the Jets win out 31-10 in a great game. And might I say, this is in the rain too. Mike White is out there slinging passes and making things look easy.
There's my dog, one of my dogs, George. They come in at some point.
It's all good. Hey, dogs, it's all good. And it looks almost as if Mike White has, dare I say, taken the reins from Zach Wilson. The locker room seemed to be a bit happier, guys. I mean, Elijah Moore, someone who wanted to be traded away, ends up, having a good game with Mike White. 315 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions in the rain. They're 7-4. I mean, can they be any better for that? I mean, yes, they've lost guys like Breece Hall, which is really unfortunate. But the Jets look like they were going the right way with Mike White at the helm.
Yeah, if a team could have a turnaround, why not the New York Jets under Robert Saleh? And I agree with you. I liken this a little bit to the Washington Commanders, George, with, obviously Carson Wentz gets injured, and all of a sudden Taylor Heineke takes over. And he has a galvanizing force about him. The locker room loves Taylor Heineke, and was declared the starting quarterback. I could very much see this being the case. Listen, they put up 30-plus points for the first time, I believe, this season, and held their opponent, the Chicago Bears, in that game in Week 12 to 10 points, or 10 or fewer points allowed. It's the first time they've done that. I think if you look at Mike White, who was a fifth-rounder out of Dallas back in 18, I believe. He's been with the Jets now since 2019, so he is a New York Jet. He's kind of bleeding the Jets, right? And, I always love our research team. He's, since 2021, averaging, when he starts, 28 points per game and 457 total yards per game. That's pretty awesome. Those are really good numbers. He led them to an opening score on their opening drive, which was their first this season. So my point being, he's manufacturing points when he plays. And the objective of football, because you played it, is to
you're right. I did.
Get that leather ball into the end zone and score points and stop the other team from doing it. So I was really impressed, albeit the Chicago Bears, who are going through a complete rebuild. I do live in Chicago, so I'm pretty aware of the conversation surrounding them. But Justin Fields obviously didn't play in the game. Trevor Siemian played in his place. So it was a game the Jets should have won. I'll be more interested in Week 13, George, when they face the Minnesota Vikings, because that right there is a really good football team. And they're going to be a playoff team, obviously. They're going to win the NFC North. And, we'll see how the Jets do. I believe it's on the road, too.
It's interesting because that Jets game, a part of me feel that the Jets can actually pull off that win. I feel like they've felt a culture change when you bring in guys like Sauce Gardner, who is going to be paired up against Justin Jefferson for sure. And the team are going to want to play to win that game. I mean, you can just feel it. But you mentioned Chicago, being from Chicago yourself. Justin Fields, prior to the injury, it seemed as if they'd unlocked something and allowed him to control a bit more of the offense and allowed him to run, which is something that we haven't seen in a while. And he's really good at it, really good at it.
Well, he leads all quarterbacks in the NFL on the ground, running the football. And I think he's 7th currently amongst all players, George, running the football. And so a switch went off. Nobody has more offensive touchdowns since Week 7 than Justin Fields. It's insane what he's doing. This is one of the tough sports towns. In America, there's Philly, they are tough, man. If you lose, they're tough on you. This is a similar New York. They're tough on you. If you don't win in New York, they're coming after you. This is a similar sort of base here in the city of Chicago as far as how people feel about the Chicago Bears. And I said it on a radio show this week that, Justin Fields single-handedly has taken an air of pessimism and skepticism and transformed it into an air of optimism. One player, because they're not winning games. I mean, we watched that Jets game and they had a decent first quarter, but he didn't play, and they're now injuries. And they're in rebuild. But despite the losses, people still want to sit in those stands. How at the end of a game, the cheap seats become cheaper because people are getting the heck out of there. Yeah. Well, they ain't leaving Bears games because of the quarterback. And that's what you see with the entire NFL, right? If you have a quarterback, you have belief. And if you have belief, you think you can win a Super Bowl, because the NFL has become who has the best roster and how well is it gelling this year. And that team usually goes far. And so you see that with the best teams. And I have no doubt the Bears will be in the mix with him at quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that is the case. And I don't know how many people would have said that when he had Matt Nagy at the helm last season and things just weren't going right for him. There was, like you said, there was a lot of negativity to Justin Fields and the Bears as a whole. And lo and behold, things have completely turned the corner. I don't know if he's actually going to be playing this weekend. I believe he was limited in his training session last I heard. But Justin Fields definitely seems like he's going to be the guy to take the team forward. And obviously they've brought in Chase Claypool as well from the Steelers, who I believe had a decent game weekend just gone. So one of the other teams in the games I can't wait to talk about is the Rams. The Rams and the Chiefs. Now, everybody saw what the Rams did when they went after OBJ. They added Bobby Wagner. They were going for it all, and they did it. They went the Super Bowl, but at what cost? Because you look at the Rams right now. Stafford isn't healthy, and there's talk of shutting him down completely. Cooper Kupp is missing 6 to 8 weeks, and I don't know if there's a point in bringing him back too. Wide receiver Allen Robinson is out too. Their run game has suffered. Darrell Henderson is no longer there. You got Kyron Williams, Cam Akers, and what a crazy turn of events, who was on the trade block, had a bad relationship going with the team, and now he's back with the team. Aaron Donald is also injured at the same time too. No OBJ, who looks like he might sign with the Giants or maybe the Cowboys. All the chips were pushed in last year. And yes, it paid off, but it seems like they're very much paying the price right now, and I really don't know what happens to them next. I mean, this could be the end of the Rams for a while.
Yeah, so they have looked from last year to this year unrecognizable, right? They're 3-8, and you just all the aforementioned injuries. I mean, when the quarterback's out week in and week out and not able to play, and now Aaron Donald, another injury casualty. Arguably the best defender in the NFL. It's if you're a Rams fan, it's tough. It's tough if you're a Rams fan, because I again go to our research stats, and I found this one just shocking. And they're on the verge of becoming the first defending Super Bowl champions to finish with a losing record since 2003.
Wow.
That team was the Bucks. Obviously, the Rams have 5 straight losses, George, and there's just been so many inconsistencies. I looked at some of the pieces they lost, like Kevin O'Connell, who's the head coach, and Wes Phillips was there with the Rams, who's with him, his offensive coordinator in Minnesota. So KO left. Now you see what kind of a coach KO is, right? What he's doing with Kirk Cousins, and now he leaves, and Sean McVay has to pick up those pieces. Defensive players lost. Von Miller was a big piece. And
of course.
Now what he's doing in Buffalo, I think without him, they don't win the Super Bowl maybe last year. Maybe it doesn't go their way. But Von changed that locker room a little bit. It's something that he does. OBJ was there last year. That's a whole other story we don't have time for, but
No.
An airplane story. But
Yeah.
unrecognizable. But I will say they just played the Kansas City Chiefs, who are pretty damn good, right at the top of that AFC playoff race once again under Patrick Mahomes.
And that's one thing that kind of, I don't want to say shocked me, because anytime you have Patrick Mahomes, anything's possible. But before this season started, I've been on so many shows, so many podcasts, and the AFC West was a talk of the town because Russell Wilson was the new quarterback in town. Devontae Adams had moved over to the Raiders. Tyreek Hill had left the Chiefs. Pandemonium, right? Khalil Mack had been traded to the Chargers, and we're all waiting to see how the AFC West is going to explode. And it hasn't been that way at all. The Broncos are struggling. Russell Wilson came over to London, as you know, as well. We watched him play, and they did get a win there. The Raiders Josh McDaniel is going through a rough time at the Raiders. I know they've won, I think, maybe 2 on the bounce now. But even the Chargers, who have been absolutely rocked by injuries, and you can't, Justin Herbert, he obviously had his rib injuries too. It's just been, the whole season, to be fair, has been really strange, except for Kansas, who Andy Reid just seems to somehow work his magic and find pieces that click, be it Pacheco in the running back position or Juju Smith-Schuster, who's been looking great after coming back and being traded from the Steelers. They just always seem to find a way to do the right thing. And lo and behold, they look like a great team. Mahomes is doing the right things. Andy Reid is calling the right plays. They look like the same kind of Kansas, even without their key pieces, number one of them being Tyreek Hill. They just win, essentially.
They do. It's really remarkable. I'm with you. That's why I always say caution people and pump the brakes before the NFL season starts. And you know that too, George. It's like you don't know what you're going to get. Like to see Russell Wilson going through this sort of drama in Denver right now. Obviously, you mentioned the injuries that have affected the Chargers. And then the Raiders, just nuts. They pick up Devontae Adams. You think this is going to be like the greatest show on turf, a new rendition of it at least. But no, it hasn't been. But the Chiefs are the mainstays. I think a lot of new moving pieces for them. You mentioned Juju and Pacheco. I remember I had one of their preseason games and remember talking to Brett Veach, their general manager, and he's like, Dales, you better watch out for Pacheco. He's going to be a baller for us. There's something about him. He's coming. But then when I say all that, George, you still have Travis Kelce, right? Yes. You get rid of Tyreek Hill, who's killing it in Miami, but Travis Kelce leads the NFL with 12 receiving touchdowns right now, I think. So he has a security blanket, Patrick Mahomes does, in Kelce, and he's got some of these young pieces. Juju ain't no joke on the perimeter. He is a good football player. That offensive line loves Patrick Mahomes. They do their best to protect him. They're the number 1 seed right now in the AFC. And if I'm the Rams, I'm going back to that game. Patrick Mahomes had 147 passer rating against man coverage.
Crazy.
Rams, come out of man coverage. You got to switch something up with
yeah.
this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Change something because, he crushed him on that. But, gosh, hey, when you have Mahomes, when you have Josh Allen, some of these young quarterbacks that are just absolute ballers. Look what Tua is doing in Miami, Tua Tagovailoa. It's just really cool to see this new wave of quarterbacks absolutely taking over the NFL. It's really awesome. You
mentioned Tua. Dre, who you know really well from Verge, who he was supposed to be here. He couldn't be here because he's busy at the moment, but we were obviously with him. We was with him down in London. He had a question for you. He wants to know if you think that the Miami Dolphins can make it all the way and win the Super Bowl.
Yes, I do. I actually told somebody the other day that I think they might have a shot. Their defense has gotten much better. I've had them this year, and I love the energy with their team. I love the new additions. I mean, those two perimeter players, and Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, they're sensational, right? I think it's very difficult to watching it in person. The ball is everywhere. And then I think about their improving defense. I do think they have a chance. I want to see what they do this weekend, though, against the San Francisco 49ers. This is a big storyline in Week 13 because Mike McDaniel, their new head coach, obviously spent so much time with Kyle Shanahan, so they know each other really well. And, I think about this San Francisco defense that is so dynamic.
Yeah.
They play smash mouth football. They don't give up big play. They're so disciplined. I want to see what this Miami offense can do about them, and then Dre and I can chat about the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, I think what I find interesting as well, if you look at the Miami backfield, it's almost like the San Francisco Dolphins, because you've got Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, who essentially have come from the 49ers, and it just seems to be clicking in all cylinders. But it's a good take, and actually I'm with you, because I was on a podcast earlier today, actually, and I actually said, as my hot take, I think the Miami Dolphins will actually win it all. Because, it's really difficult to stop a team who have so much speed in every element. And yes, the defense is getting better, but that offense is really, really hard to stop. I mean, Gesicki, Waddle, Tyreek Hill, the running backs. Yeah,
but then also Mike McDaniel and Tua have an incredible relationship. It is so good that passer rating, it's quarterback efficiency. It's how efficiently quarterbacks throw the football when you factor in all the different parts of it, interceptions, touchdowns, all of it. And for Tua to lead the NFL in passer rating speaks to his level of knowledge quickly of this offense. And then I just think Chris Greer, the GM, has done such a good job, like we just talked about, tooling their team with a lot of skill players. The Bradley Chubb addition to the defense was I say it like massively, very emphatically, because now by the time we hit playoffs, he's probably figured out how he works in this defense. So I like a lot of the pieces they have. I'm looking at their roster right now. And the backfield is solid to bring in Wilson, another player, via the San Francisco 49ers midseason. It just shows me they're ready, and they're ready to win now. And the teams that do that often get places they want to be at the end of the season. So.
Yeah, and they deserve it. I mean, there was a lot of criticism before the season with Tua and Mike McDaniel, and I'm glad that they're able to prove some people wrong. So before we wrap some things up, because we wanted to do a quick take on those games, there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on. And I can see some of the great memorabilia behind you. Your basketball career is amazing. So I'm going to just reel off some of the stats that people may or may not know. So everything kind of started with basketball for you. So Tisch Secondary School, winning 3 back-to-back championships, going to the University of Oklahoma, making an Olympic appearance for Canada, first team All-American twice, Big 12 Conference Player of the Year, Big 12 all-time career assist leader, drafted 3rd overall, which is the highest pick for a Canadian ever, and then going into becoming a basketball analyst, which then transitioned into the NFL. I mean, that's pretty impressive, I have to say. That is, and I'm just looking behind you, and I can see some of the stuff there. Really cool stuff. Yeah.
Well, now I know why I came on the show, because you were going to say all that about me, George, and I'm just kidding. No, it was really cool. It was really cool for a young, skinny girl from Canada trying to figure out the big leagues in the States and coming down to Oklahoma, which is a big change, big culture change from Canada to Oklahoma. It's cool. I'm very proud of the basketball journey. I'm reminded by the multitude of injuries. I don't know about you and your football career, but man, I got so many injuries from hoops. That those are the reminders. But I think the one thing about sports for both of us, maybe you could speak for yourself, but it's just really cool having the background, because it helps in the locker room. It helps with, I watched you interview players, whether it was the Saints or the Vikings or whoever you were covering. There's a relatability factor when an understanding of what it's like in the so-called trenches, to where you understand, okay, you just lost a game. This is how the mood is. Like, this is how I need to approach it. So It was many years ago, but I've been in the NFL for 14 years, and it has helped me every step of the way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think Mark Ingram was one of the guys that I spoke to in particular about him reaching 10,000 all-purpose yards and what it's like being in the trenches. And he actually, like you say, he was able to actually open up a bit and have a bit more of a conversation, because I understand the feeling of what it's like. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because I think that whole background of the basketball was really, really impressive. But last but not least, I always ask my guests, what does a typical workday look like for you? Obviously, you do so many things and you go to so many games and you cover and speak to so many people, but what would a typical workday look like?
Yeah, during the week, it's a heavy prep. So, for instance, today, it's essentially interviews with the teams I'm covering. I have the Titans and Eagles this week. Mm-hmm. I lost your picture, too, by the way.
It'll come back. No, it's all good. Don't worry.
Okay.
It'll come back.
And so, I've been interviewing players from both of those teams this week. We have shows that after the pandemic, George, I created a studio office, which is what you're seeing. And, I have lights in here. And so I do my TV from here. Now, on Sundays, I'll be in Philly, which I'm so thrilled about because they're 10-1 and the Titans are a really good football team. And it's going to be a great game. I get up roughly 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm over at the stadium by 7:30, getting ready for our show to start at 9 o'clock. And I will go all the way until there's a flight, a 9 o'clock flight from Philly back to Chicago, probably get home by 11 o'clock. So
Wow.
From 5 a.m. to 11 p.m., I'm on the grind, unless I stay the night. But it's a really long day. We do reports all morning, NFL Game Day morning. It's our 4-hour live show, and right up to kickoff. And then we're at the game, and then we go down to the field, and we'll grab a player or two. So it's really cool. I love it. And, every week it's a new storyline.
Yeah, especially in the NFL. I mean, you can any given Sunday, like they say, right?
Yeah.
But I always enjoy asking that question because we always see like the finished product, and we never really know what all the work and everything that goes in to get to that stage. So I feel like it's a good question to ask. But with that, it brings us to the end of the show. I can't thank you enough for coming on, Stacey. We've been speaking and getting this arranged. I've enjoyed it. It's always great to speak to someone who's on the ground as well. I mean, you're all the ones speaking to the players. You understand the relationships between what's happening and being able to. I mean, we all watch you on the NFL Network, so it's great to be able to actually have the conversation with you here. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that show. I definitely have. Where can people watch you, Stacey? Where can they find you? Although it goes without saying.
NFL Network, and anytime there's something interesting in the league, I try to post it on Twitter at Stacey Dales. But you rock, George. Thank you for having me. Your energy is infectious. Every time I come to London, you, Dre, you guys are so kind and welcoming to us, and we got to get you over here a little bit more. Okay,
that sounds good.
I don't know. You talk to your bosses. Maybe you're your own boss. But
yeah, that sounds good. We'll make it happen. We'll absolutely make it happen. Again, thank you so much, Stacey, for coming on the show. Make sure you guys stay tuned. We've got more guests coming on soon. But until then, keep it locked in Georgian Sports, and we'll see you soon.